Can there be too much of a good thing? Some popular tourist destinations think so, as they try to manage over-tourism.
Welcome to Plain English, the podcast that goes at the right speed for English language learners. Listen now and read the transcript online at plainenglish.com. Now, here's Jeff, your host for today's episode.
Cities like Barcelona, Venice, and Amsterdam get a lot of tourists, but that sometimes has a negative effect on the people who live there. What's causing this problem, and what can be done about it? Welcome into Plain English, Thursday edition for November 1st, 2018. This is my second attempt at recording the episode. On my first attempt, the heater came on in the middle of the recording, and when my heat comes on, it sounds like an airplane is landing. So I might freeze, but the recording will be clear. I'm Jeff. JR is the producer, and you are listening to a podcast for learning English. That's because we go nice and slow here so you can understand every word we say. And like always, check out the transcript of the program, word for word transcript at plainenglish.com/99, since this is episode number 99. Listen, I promised today that we would talk about the results of the Brazilian presidential election, which took place last Sunday. But unfortunately, I got called away on a work trip, so I had to write and record this episode before the election took place. So we are going to talk about the Brazilian elections next time on Monday, and today we'll talk about over-tourism, which I was going to do on Monday. Sorry about that, but duty calls, you know? Most places around the world would love more tourists to visit, but some of the world's top travel destinations are actually grappling with what's called over-tourism, the heavy burden that a large number of visitors places on a local population. Cities like Barcelona, Amsterdam, and Venice are taking steps to control the flow of tourists, while more natural destinations like Machu Pichuu and Iceland's southern coast are struggling to reduce the environmental impact of so many tourists. Let's start with the cities first. Many popular European cities are facing a rapid rise in the number of tourists, which is making things uncomfortable for the people who actually, live in those cities. The worries come in a few categories. First, that so many tourists put a burden on the local infrastructure. Their tour buses block traffic, they crowd into buses and trains, and pack into the most popular museums. Many European cities are reluctant to expand or build new infrastructure in their historic city centers, so the charming narrow alleyways and cobblestone roads now have to accommodate an ever-rising number of people. Another worry is that tourists behave badly. Amsterdam has to deal with the after effects of so many tourists consuming legal cannabis and drinking too much. But probably the most sensitive effect of over-tourism in cities is on the cost of living. For a while, the number of tourists in a city would have little effect on an average person's pocketbook. Maybe the restaurants in the most heavily trafficked area would be more expensive than normal, but it would be easy to avoid those places. However, we now live in the age of Airbnb, the service that allows homeowners and apartment owners to rent out their places to tourists rather than to long-term tenants. Spain has felt this acutely in its two largest cities. There are so many Airbnb rentals in Madrid and Barcelona that locals complain of being priced out of the market. That's because apartment owners find it more lucrative to rent to tourists, so the number of apartments available for locals falls. And with the reduction in supply comes an increase in price. So what can be done about this? In Venice, they have a novel approach. They constructed a huge gate around the center of the city, and if it gets too crowded, they just shut the gate, blocking tourists from coming in, but letting residents pass. That doesn't seem like a friendly approach, but it works for them. In Madrid, they are putting limits on Airbnb usage. Now you can't rent out an apartment for more than 90 days in a year, and you can't dedicate a whole apartment block just for short-term rentals. Amsterdam imposes a higher tax on hotel stays in the center of the city than it does in the outskirts. Edinburgh, Scotland, is considering an additional tourist tax and using the proceeds to pay for services like trash collection and infrastructure repairs. Tourism boards and cities can also use a little public relations to their advantage, encouraging people to visit on the off-season or promoting some of their secondary attractions. More natural destinations face their own concerns. The famous Inca ruins of Machu Picchu in Peru are being overrun by tourists. The trails that take tourists to the isolated ruins are over capacity since more people want to go than the trails can reasonably accommodate. Pangong Lake in India was made famous by a Bollywood film called 3 Idiots, and now tons of tourists are flocking to this pristine location in the Himalayas and leaving their trash and pollution behind. Iceland has seen its tourism grow 25% every year for the last several years, which has been great for the economy, but has also brought some environmental wear and tear. The tricky part is that while it's definitely good for the world to have more tourism, a lot of tourists all want to see the same places. And that's where social media comes in. There are several famous ruins in Peru, not to mention everything else you can do in that country, but everyone wants to go to Machu Picchu. Europe is a treasure trove of beautiful paintings, but everyone wants their selfie with the Mona Lisa. It's easy to lament the increase in tourists and the negative impact they sometimes have, but let's keep things in perspective. Tourism is great for the world economy. It employs about 5% of the world's labor force, and that part of the world economy is growing quickly. When people can travel to see different cultures, they learn more about themselves and the world and other people and cultures, which is overall a great thing. And by the way, you might be bothered by tourists in your own backyard, but chances are you're a tourist yourself when you visit other places. In fact, most cities and states are clamoring for more tourists. They want the additional visitors and the money they bring to the local economy. I think what these cities have to do is take some of that inflow of money from tourism and reinvest some of it in expanding capacity, maybe extending some museum hours, adding public transportation, or improving access to some lesser-known attractions. It's funny, an article I was reading to get ready for this episode said that all visitors to Amsterdam just want to visit the Van Gogh Museum and the Anne Frank House. And I thought, actually, those are the two things I would want to see in Amsterdam someday. So maybe I will be one of those tourists clogging the popular attractions in Amsterdam. There are tons of great new words in this episode. In fact, you might say this episode is a treasure trove of new words and expressions. Expressions like treasure trove, in fact, which appeared earlier. So this is a great time to check out the interactive transcripts on the website if you have not already done so. We have translations of all these difficult words like lament and clamoring for and flocking. All those are translated for you on the website. The translations are from English to Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Chinese, French, and Japanese. And a big thanks as we approach our 100th episode to all our translators, Paula, Mattia, Tao, Meg, and of course JR, who does the Spanish translations. So check those out at plainenglish.com/99. plainenglish.com/99. I heard from a lot of you on Facebook last week, so I'd like to acknowledge just a few people who wrote to me. First of all, Manuel moved from Madrid to Texas, two very, very different places, and he's getting used to his new life in the state of big, wide open spaces. He listens to Plain English as he goes for a walk around the neighborhood. and he's also in ESL classes, which is great. So Manuel, welcome to the United States. I know it's not an easy transition, and I'm glad to have you with us here every Monday and Thursday. I also want to say hi to Addie for recommending us on Facebook, and Jean from the Philippines who also recommended us. So like I was saying before, there are a lot of great words in this episode, but I chose the phrase wear and tear since it's probably the most common and it's the hardest to figure out on your own. Wear and tear refers to the process of breaking down over time. If you have a long commute to work, your car might experience a lot of wear and tear. It's gradually breaking down since you drive a lot of miles. Here in Chicago, we have freezing weather and it causes potholes in the streets. That increases the wear and tear on the cars here since we constantly hit these bumps in the road. Sometimes you might say an aging athlete has a lot of wear and tear on his body. Tom Brady is 41. Can you believe that? He's the quarterback of the New England Patriots in America's National Football League. He's managed all the wear and tear of being an NFL quarterback very well since he's still out there, still beating the Chicago Bears like he did 2 weeks ago. For most players, by the time they hit their mid-30s, the wear and tear on their bodies is too much. They have knee, shoulder, arm injuries that persist and cause them to slow down. And so it is in the beautiful old cities of Europe, which are now trying to accommodate more and more visitors. The buses, the trains, the sidewalks, the roads, the museums, the airports, the plazas, the parks, all are experiencing more wear and tear than they're used to. And what happens when your car has a lot of wear and tear? You have to invest a little to keep it running. You have to replace parts, stay on top of your regular maintenance. And that's what I think these popular tourist destinations have to do too. Invest a little bit of what they earn from tourism and put it back into the tourist infrastructure in their cities. One more example, I've had this computer that I'm using for 3 years, and it's had a lot of wear and tear. I take it to the office every day, take it on airplanes, plug it in, unplug it, set it up, hook a lot of stuff up to it, install software on it. I've dropped it once or twice. It's had a lot of wear and tear. And after 3 years, it's starting to show. Your favorite jeans or the shoes you wear to work, after a while, they might show some wear and tear. But with a comfortable pair of shoes, that's not always a bad thing though, right? Don't some things get more comfortable with a little wear and tear? Before we go, I want to correct a mistake I made in a previous episode. In the episode about Jamal Khashoggi, I said that Istanbul was the capital of Turkey. As Homer would say on The Simpsons, "No, the capital of Turkey is Ankara, not Istanbul." But do you want to know something funny? I recorded 2 episodes at a time last week, one on Jamal Khashoggi and the other on Canada legalizing marijuana. And in that other episode, the one about Canada, I originally wrote that Toronto was the capital of Canada. But as I was recording it, I caught myself and corrected it in the recording. Of course, the capital is Ottawa. But the funny thing is that in 2 episodes in a row on the same day, I made the same mistake. Next, I'll probably say that Sao Paulo is the capital of Brazil, or that Sydney is the capital of Australia, right? All right, that's all for today. Thanks for being with us for 99 episodes. JR and I will be back for episode number 100 on Monday. Like I said before, that one will be about the results of the Brazilian presidential election. By the time you're hearing this, you'll know the results, but on Monday, you'll be able to hear about it in English. So don't forget to join us on Monday. Have a great weekend.